Welcome to my presentation of an office workstation ergonomic assessment. I'd like to give special thanks to the David Jones logistics team for allowing me to conduct the ergonomic assessment on their workstation. We'll begin with a bit of a background to ergonomics and the need for ergonomic assessments in workplaces. We'll then look at the selected assessment tool and how this tool was applied to the workstation. Finally, I'll go through any recommendations that can be made to improve this particular workstation's ergonomics. It's important to note that this workstation is actually used by around 5 different employees throughout the workday. The assessment was conducted with the logistics manager, who uses the workstation most regularly. On average, this is around 4 hours per day. Computers, whether fixed or laptops, are commonplace in almost all Australian workplaces. With an increased reliance on such devices comes increased risk to the workers who are required to operate them. Ergonomics is the science and technology of aligning the work-related activities and surrounding environment to the abilities, dimensions, and needs of the people operating them. This has a wide variety of benefits, but most notably, it increases the efficiency of the human interaction with the computer, thereby improving work-related performance and also reducing the level of risk associated with the hazards of these activities. The prevalence of musculoskeletal disorders such as back, shoulder, arm, and neck pain amongst office workers is estimated to be between 60 to 70% annually in Australia. These figures highlight the need for ergonomic assessments to be conducted in all workplaces, whether by trained professional or in-house through readily available, easy to follow ergonomic checklists. A checklist aids the process by allowing the systematic examination of the workplace conditions. The International Labour Organization recommends using checklists developed locally. This helps to ensure that the ideas for improvements to be made are feasible in a local context. While it may seem that the longest checklist possible will provide the most thorough ergonomic assessment, this can actually reduce the effectiveness of the assessment, as it may draw focus away from the key points that need to be addressed. As an untrained professional, it's actually quite easy to get lost in the details. I've chosen to utilise the Ergonomic Guide to Computer-Based Workstations, developed by the Workplace Health and Safety Queensland in 2012. This checklist has been locally adapted from a tool originally developed by a Canadian regulatory body. Let's begin the assessment with the chair. Now, as you can see, it's in reasonable condition, aside from one tear in the fabric, which you can see on the front right-hand side of the seat pan. The workers are familiar with all adjustments that can be made with the chair. However, given the chair is set up for use by the manager, other employees tend not to bother adjusting the chair to suit their requirements. While this may be fine for relatively short usage periods, if the employees are intending to operate the device for more extended periods of time, they should really be adjusting the chair. The chair is estimated to be around 5 years old, and over time, the cushioning on the chair has become somewhat reduced. While it's still relatively comfortable, a replacement should be considered. It also does not have an adjustable seat pan depth, which means it will unlikely suit much taller or much shorter workers. There is adequate lumbar support on the backrest. This is further supported by the backrest tilt, allowing the user to maintain the natural curvature of the spine. I was unable to locate any indication on the chair that it conformed to any Australian standards, such as the Australian-New Zealand Standard 4438/1997. The minimum requirement for a chair for this workstation would be the standard Type 2 Level 4. Next, we'll look at the posture of the main user of the workstation while seated in this swivel chair. Here, the thighs are approximately level with the feet flat on the floor. The height of the workstation is also adequate, as the forearms are level. The chair is slightly pulled back from the desk in this situation to allow for the posture to be analysed. The backrest is tilted slightly back to allow an increase on the angle of the hip slightly more than a right angle, around 100 to 120 degrees, decreasing the force loading on the lumbar spine. The back of the knees are around 10 centimetres from the seat pan of the chair, and there is adequate room under the surface of the desk to ensure that the worker's knees and thighs are not in contact with the underside of the work surface. The logistics manager is the tallest person using the workstation, which gives the indication that a footrest may be required for shorter employees to adequately support their feet. Moving on to the desk and work surface. In this picture, we can see clearly that the desk is 720 millimeters high from floor to working surface, and there is 850 millimeters of leg space width, allowing the operator to swivel easily in and out of the desk. This is more than is required in the Australian-New Zealand Standard 4442 of 1997 for office desks. The leg space is adequately deep, with 600 millimeters of depth clearance. However, these items were stored under the desk, including the desktop tower. This item was relocated as it not only represents a fire hazard being contained under the desk, it is also reduced the amount of legroom, restricting the ability of the worker to stretch their legs at periodic intervals. The surface of the desk does not comply with the standard, which requires minimum dimensions of 1600mm wide by 800mm depth for mixed tasks of clerical and computer work. Aside from this, the surface is light and non-reflective. However, the surface is slightly textured, which makes it difficult to write on a single piece of paper. Given the mixed tasks that are completed on this desk, it is recommended that the desk be replaced with a compliant desk with a larger work area that would ideally be electronically adjustable in height to support different users of the workstation. It must also be ensured that the desk has rounded corners and no sharp edges or catches. The assessment revealed that the monitor was both far too high and also far too far away from the worker. Checklist recommends that the top of the monitor be positioned just below eye level at around an arm's length distance away from the user. This particular monitor is not adjustable and therefore must be replaced. The recommended viewing angle of a visual display is 15 to 30 degrees. This is in an effort to reduce the strain placed on the shoulder and neck muscles in a prolonged viewing session. Studies have shown that less visual effort is required when gazing in a downward direction and also results in higher visual comfort. Wherever the monitor is positioned, it should be able to be easily read without straining the eyes. In this case, the font size of the display must be significantly increased as the monitor is very far from the user. Given that several of the workers use the workstation are shorter in height, this monitor setup is highly inadequate. This computer monitor was temporarily replaced to represent the ideal setup. Here, the viewing angle is slightly downward and the monitor is positioned just over an arm's length away from the worker. This particular monitor is adjustable in height and tilt. The worker is encouraged to adjust the monitor regularly to determine their ideal viewing distance and monitor height. Both the keyboard and mouse should be positioned away from the edge of the desk. This gives the forearms support by reducing strain on the wrist. The keyboard should be positioned directly in front of the display to eliminate the need to twist or rotate when using it. When using reference or hard copy documents, these should be placed between the keyboard and the screen or directly adjacent to the screen, as positioning the keyboard too far away from the user contributes to poor posture and may result in the need to lean forward from the chair, reducing its ability to provide lumbar support. The mouse is quite small and does not fit well in the user's hand. This results in increased pressure being applied by the hand to operate the mouse. It should be considered that this mouse be replaced with a larger mouse that is ambidextrous, allowing the user to operate it with both hands, reducing the strain by splitting the workload. The desktop should be organized so that those items used most frequently, such as input devices and the telephone, are within the primary work zone. Other items, such as documents and those used only briefly, should be placed in the secondary work zone, no more than 1 arm's length away from the operator. If the telephone is used frequently and at the same time as the input devices are being operated, a headset will be required. This particular telephone has a loudspeaker function, which serves a similar purpose. The lighting in the work area is adequate to ensure that there is no glare of the computer monitor and the user is not straining their eyes to see hard copy documents. There is no windows or outside competing light sources. Given that the workstation is on a loading dock, there is often large amounts of noise from vehicles entering and exiting the dock. This noise can greatly affect a person's performance in tasks like reading and writing and can provide an annoyance when trying to communicate either face-to-face or over the phone. It is recommended that tasks which require large amounts of concentration and communication be conducted outside receiving times. This will reduce the mental strain on the employees. Finally, we move on to a summary of the recommendations identified through the ergonomic checklist. It was identified that the chair was in relatively poor condition and was not approved by the relevant standards. It is therefore recommended that this chair be replaced. As the desk is operated by more than one employee, perhaps a variety of seating options should be considered. This desk is of inadequate size due to the nature of work it is used for. A desk compliant with the relevant standard should be considered, particularly one that is adjustable in height as to accommodate workers of different heights. The visual display was repositioned as part of the ergonomic assessment. This particular display was inoperable, therefore a new display should be obtained to reduce the viewing distance and lower the viewing angle with the goal of reducing eye strain. Both a document holder and a footrest should be obtained. These relatively inexpensive items will have a significant effect on the ergonomics of the workstation. It is advised that the work schedule is to be reviewed so that most work is conducted on the workstation is outside receival times to minimise the effect that this noise will have on workers. Ergonomic training should be considered, as it has been found that training office workers in ergonomic principle and correct posture, as well as providing them with time to adjust their workstation, results in a significant decrease in musculoskeletal and visual discomfort over the course of a working day. I have attached several documents here for your perusal to further improve the ergonomics of the workstation, and also a few options of chairs, footrests, document holders, and desks you may wish to purchase. Thank you for listening to my presentation.